Hi everybody, this is Algebra 2, Lesson 2. This lesson covers negative exponents, product and power theorems for exponents, and circle relationships. Alright, so the first theorem that we're going to learn is the negative exponent theorem. And basically this is x to the negative n equals 1 over x to the n. Basically all this is saying is that when you have a negative exponent, you just move it to the other side of the fraction, okay? So when you move an exponent up or down, right, it changes the sign on that exponent. So if we had 3 to the negative 2, right, that's all over 1, because anything can be put over 1, we're just going to move that to the bottom of the fraction. So we're going to have 1 over 3 squared. 3 squared is 9. That's going to equal 1/9. Okay, we can do it the other way around. Say you had 1 over 3 negative squared. We're going to move that to the top of the fraction. So we're going to have 3 squared. We got rid of the negative by moving the exponent up. It'd be over 1, but we really don't need that. 3 times 3 is 9, so that just equals 9. Okay, so when you move an exponent to the bottom or the top of the fraction, the other side of the fraction bar, it changes the sign on that exponent. Alright, so here's some examples. First one is A. This has 1 over 3 negative squared. Okay, to get rid of that negative, we're going to have to move it up. So that's going to make it be 3 squared. And then 3 squared is 9, because that means 3 times 3. Okay, the exponents just tell us how many times to multiply. All right, B. B is 3 to the negative third. We're going to have to move that to the bottom of our fraction, right? So we're going to have 1 over 3 to the third. 3 to the third means 3 times 3 times 3. That's going to be 1 over 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. Okay. C is negative 3 negative squared. Okay, so we have to get rid of that negative first before we can do anything by moving the whole thing to the bottom of our fraction. Now we have negative 3 squared. Okay, negative 3 squared. Now the rule for this is if we can cover that negative up, right, there's nothing guarding it. See if I can make something to cover it with. In the book it shows it like you're putting your finger over it. Okay, so we're gonna pretend that's our finger. Okay, and we can put it over that negative sign. So we're going to pretend the negative sign's not there, right? So that would be 3 times 3, right, which equals 9. Then we remove the negative sign, or remove our finger. I can't grab it. Grab it. Here we go. Delete it. There we go. Then we put the negative back on. You guys get the idea, right? So if it's not, okay, so if we have like negative 3 in parentheses squared, we have to include that negative 3. Okay, if we have negative 3 not in parentheses squared, we just do 3 times 3, and then we put the negative on the end. Okay, that'll be 9. This one, they would cancel each other, and this is positive 9. That one, they don't, because we didn't include it. We get the negative 3, and we add it on there, okay? So this one is negative 9. This next one, D, we've got negative 3 negative squared. First, we got to move it to the bottom of our fraction, so we got 1 over negative 3 in parentheses squared. That means we cannot leave that negative off. We have to include it when we do our negative 3 times negative 3. Those are going to cancel, and we're going to get positive 9. So that would be 1/9, positive 1/9. This one was negative 1/9. Okay, this last one, we can cover up that one, right? But we can't cover up this one, so we got to remember that that's there. All right, first we have to move this whole thing to the bottom of the fraction, so we're going to have 1 over negative 3 to the third. Okay, so this negative 3 to the third is going to be negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. Okay, that would be, we cancel 2 of those. We get 3 times 3 is 9, 9 times 3 is 27, it's going to be negative 27. Okay, so we're going to have 1 over, this is the same negative sign, right? I didn't do anything to that, times negative 27. Okay, there's my answer to negative 3 to the third, negative 27. Now these are going to cancel each other, and I'm going to get positive 1 over 27. I know that's a little bit confusing. Just remember, if there's a negative inside the parentheses, you have to include it when you do your exponent, okay? If there's not, then you do your exponent, then you tag it on at the end. All right, product theorem for exponents. If m and n are real numbers and x is not equal to 0, then okay, so basically what this is saying is if you have x to some number, like let's say squared, times x to the third, it's going to equal x to the 2 plus 3. All right, another way of looking at that would be, let's say we have x squared times x to the third. Well, what does x squared mean? It means x times x. And x to the third, what does that mean? Well, it means x times x times x 3 times. So how many do I have total? We've got 2 and 3. That's x to the 5th, right? So you just add your exponents. When you multiply like bases, the exponents get added, okay? Because that's just counting up how many times we're going to multiply that base. So we just add those together. Alright, so an example of what your problems are going to look like. Now we can only do this with like bases. So first I'm going to find all of the ones that are the same. Fix this so we can see. So here I have x squared, x to the negative 5, and x to the 5th. I'm going to go ahead and write those out. X squared, x negative 5, x 5. Okay, so I'm just going to add these up. So I've got 2, negative 5, positive 5. That's just going to be negative 5 and positive 5 are 0 plus 2. That means I have x squared. Okay, then I'm going to do all my y's separately. So I've got 1. If it doesn't have an exponent, that just means it's 1. Negative 4. So I've got x to the 1. No, whoops, y. Y to the 1. Y to the negative 4. Oh, when I was adding up the x's, I didn't see that 0, but it's not going to change anything. Okay. Alright, so if I've got y to the 1 and y to the negative 4, that's going to be y to the negative 3. 1 plus negative 4 is negative 3. So my answer is going to be x squared y to the negative 3. Right? Because I can't combine those, the bases aren't the same. Alright, so you only add like bases. So our x's, we've got 2, negative 5, positive 5, and 0. When we add all those numbers together, we get this 2 right here. Our y's, we have 1 and negative 4, and we get that negative 3 when we add them. Alright, here's another one. Here we've got a bunch of x's and y's. Alright, so we've got, let's count up all of our x's first. So we've got x to the 4th, x to the 4th, right there, so 4, and negative 10. So that's going to be x. 4 and negative 10 would be negative 6. Alright, and then our y's, we've got, this would be 1, negative 3, and 5. So positive 5. 1, and 5 would be 6. 6 minus 3 is 3, so that would be y to the third. All right. Now for the bottom, our x's are going to be x to the negative 3 and x squared, positive 2. That will be x negative 1, okay? And then our y's, negative 6 and 10. So that will be 10 minus 6 will be 4. Y to the fourth. Okay, now it wants us to divide. Remember, a fraction just means divide. So what I have to do is try to bring everything up to the top of that fraction. And remember, when we bring something to the top of the fraction, we're just going to change its sign. So this negative 1 becomes a positive 1. So negative 6 plus 1 would be negative 5. And our y, this negative or a positive 4, when it goes up to the top, it's going to become a negative 4, right? So 3 minus 4 will be y to the negative 1. And that's the answer to that. All right, so your last step is going to be bring everybody up to the top. Button. All right, the power theorem for exponents. So this is what this means is when you're bringing a power up to a power. So, for example, this one would be like if you had x squared to the third, okay? So what does x squared mean? X squared means we have two x's, right? Well, what does to the third mean? It means that we're going to do whatever this is 3 times. So we're going to have x squared times x squared times x squared, right? Now if we write out these x squareds, means x times x, and that one means x times x, and then this one means x times x. How many are we going to have? There's 2, and there's 2, and there's 2. It's going to be 6. So all we really did was multiply 2 times 3 equals 6. Okay? I'll do another example real quick with some other numbers. All right, let's say that we had x to the third, and we're going to want that to the fourth, right? So that means we're going to have this right here 4 times. 2, 3, 4, right? X to the third really means 1, 2, 3. And then this one means 1, 2, 3. And then that one, we're going to have 3 x's. And then this one, we're going to have 3. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4 sets of 3, right? And that 3 times 4 is 12. So that's going to be x to the 12th. I just multiply my exponents. When you bring a power up to a power, you just multiply. Okay, so what this next one means, we're going to distribute that if we have more than one. So let's say inside our parentheses we have x squared, y squared, right? And we want that to the third. We're going to multiply here, and we're going to multiply here, okay? So 2 times 3 would be 6. I'm going to have x to the 6, and then 2 times 3 is 6. I'm going to have y to the 6. I'll do another example. All right, if I've got a squared plus b to the third, and I want to cube the whole thing, or we're going to do the fourth for the whole thing. So that means I'm going to do 4 times 2, okay, so I need 4 a squared, so that's going to be a. 4 times 2 is 8, a to the 8th, okay, and then this one I'm going to do 4 times 3 is 12, so that'll be b to the 12th, okay. I'll do one more example. What if I have x squared, y to the third, z squared, and I'm going to do all of this squared. Okay, so what this really means is I have x squared squared, so that means I'm going to have x squared and another x squared, right? Then I have y to the third squared, so I'm going to have y to the third and another y to the third. Then I'm going to have, whoops, that was supposed to be a z squared, so I'm going to have z squared and another z squared, okay? And then if I take this out, that means x times another x times x. And then y to the third means I'm going to have 1, 2, 3 y's. And then that one I'll have 1, 2, 3 y's. And then for my z's, I'm going to have z's and another z. Okay. And then another z squared. Okay. So for here, for my x squared, I've got x squared and x squared. Y to the third squared, I have a y to the third and another y to the third. My z squared, I'm going to have z squared and z squared. Okay, when I count all those up, I'm going to have x 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then for my y, I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then for my z, I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so all I really had to do is multiply my exponents. So x 2 times 2 is 4. Y 2 times 3 is 6. And then z 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, hopefully that made sense. Alright, let's look at some examples of these. Okay, so this first one has this one I'm going to do all of my exponents first. So right here, I'm just going to do my x right there. Now I have to do this. So 2 times 3 would be 6, and that would be x to the negative 6. Okay. Then I've got a y. Then I have to distribute this out, so that would be x to the third. And then times this one, 2 times 3, that would be negative third. Okay. And then 2 times 3 is 6, that would be y to the negative 6. There's my top. Okay, now I'm going to do that on my bottom. So right here I've got y 2 to the third, so y 2 times 3 is 6. This one doesn't have any exponent, any multiplication going on, so that would be just negative 3. Okay, there's that one. Now this one is x squared to the third, 2 times 3 is 6, that will be x to the 6. Alright, now I'm going to put all my bases together. Okay, so for my top I've got, that would be x to the 1. So let me change colors. So I've got 1 minus 6 and minus 3. If I put those negatives together, that would be a positive 1, a negative 6, and a negative 3. Negative 6 and 3 would be negative 9. Positive 1, you owe $9, you pay back $1 of it, that's negative 8. So I've got x to the negative 8. Okay, now for my y's, so I've used all those. For my y's, that would be a 1, and that would be a negative 6. So I've got positive 1, negative 6. I owe $6. I pay back $1. Now I owe 5. Okay. Oops. Now for my bottom, I have y to the 6 and negative 3. That'd be 6 minus 3 is 3. And then this one I just have x to the 6. Let me swap those around. I'm going to put my x first, x to the 6. And then I've got y to the negative 3. Now it wants me to move all of that up to the top. Okay, so I'm going to move all those up to the top. Actually, it wants you to write all these positive. You can write it any way. So if I wanted to put all these positive, I would move my x down to the bottom to make that be plus 8. 6 and 8 is 14. And then I would move this guy. I think I got something messed up there. Let's see. x to the 14th on the bottom, and then y to the 4th on the top. Alright, 3 times 2 was negative 6. Ah, that was a positive 6 right there on that y. Okay, got to be very careful with that. Alright, so what I did here is that should have been a positive 6, because that was negative 2 times negative 3. Negative times negative makes a positive, so that should be positive 6 right there. So when I put these together on my y's, this should have been 7 instead of negative 5. That should be 7, positive 7. Right, because I've got 1 and positive 6 makes 7. Alright, now if I move this to the top, and then that was y to the negative 3. 7 minus 3 is 4, so I should have y to the 4th on the top. Y to the 4th over x to the 14th on that one. These can be a little confusing. Just be really careful with all your positives and your negatives there. Alright, there's going to be another example of this, I think. See? Nope, circle relationships. Okay, so circle relationships, we know that the area of a circle, if we know the area of a circle, we can find the diameter and the radius of the circle. Okay, so we know the area. The area of a circle is 12.2 meters squared. What is the approximate circumference of the circle? Alright, so we know the formula for a circle is area equals pi r squared. So we're just going to fill in our 12.2 where our A is, because that's our area, equals pi r squared. Okay, so what we need to do is divide by pi, divided by pi on both sides, right? Then we would know that 12.2 divided by 3.14, like that. And it is going to be, let's see, we would do that on a calculator. So let me pull up a calculator. Pull up a calculator. Okay, so what we need is 12.2 divided by 3.14. 12.2 divided by, if there's a pi button, you can use that. Okay, so we're getting 3.888 blah blah blah, and then we need to find the square root of that. Alright, so if we know that, what was it? 3.885. We're going to say 3.885 equals r squared, right? So now we need the square root of that and the square root of that. So if we just square root it, I think it's that one. So we need square root of 3.885, 1.97. The book has 1.97. So the answer would be 1.97 meters. Okay, so you're going to need your calculator on these. Definitely use your calculator. You don't want to have to try to figure that out. Writing it down. The circumference of a circle is 8 pi centimeters. What's the area of the circle? Okay, so if we said C equals 2 pi r, right, and C is 8 pi, we're just going to put it on the other side of the formula, equals 2 pi r. First thing we can divide by is pi, right? And we're going to cancel it there and there. So now we have 8 equals 2r. Now we're going to divide by 2 on both sides. R is going to be equal to 4. Okay, so now we know what the radius is, but we need to find the area of the circle. Okay, so area equals pi r squared, right? And now we know what our r is, so we can figure that out. So area equals 3.14 times r, which is 4 squared. 4 squared is 16. So we can go over to our calculator and we can say 16 times pi. I'm trying to find a pi button, but I don't see it. I'll just do 3.14. And that's going to equal 50.24. And the book says 16 pi. Okay, so they didn't even work it out. Or you could just write 16 pi as your answer. They didn't even work it out in the book. Alright, this video is getting long. Next. Alright, so go ahead and pause the video, work those practice problems, and then I'll work them for you. Alright, first we're going to simplify these. So our first one is -4 negative squared. So what we're going to need to do is move that down to the bottom of our fraction. So we're going to put a 1 over it. 1 over -4 squared. Now if I wanted to cover this up, I could. So that means I'm going to do 4 times 4 is 16. Then put my negative on. So this is going to be -1/16. Okay, this one I'm going to move down to the bottom. And I've got a 1 over my fraction, -4 squared. So that means first I'm going to have to do -4 times -4, which will be +16 inside that. So I'm going to have -16. So my answer is going to be -1/16, right? Because this negative sign right here has to get tacked on at the end. Okay, next one. We're going to go through these really, really carefully. Alright, so first I've got to, is that to the 0? Double check my problem, make sure I wrote that down right. Yep. Okay, so if I distribute this out and I say 0 times 2, that's going to be 0. So that's x to the 0. And this one, 0 times -2, that's y to the 0. Alright, right here, I'm going to say 2 times 3 would be 6, and that would be positive. Negative times negative is a positive, so x to the 6th. And then that one would be y to the -2. Remember, if it doesn't have an exponent, we just call it 1. Alright, down here we don't have anything, so we've got y -8, x to the 4th, y squared, x to the 3rd. Now we're going to put them all together. Zeros aren't, we're just adding them. Those aren't going to count. So we're going to have x to the 6th, y to the -2. Now down here, our x's, we're going to have x to the 4th and x to the 3rd. 3 and 4 is 7. Okay, and here we're going to have y -8, +2 would be -6. Okay. Make sure I've got that right. Alright, x to the 6th. Yep, because -2 times that would be +6. Okay, and then the bottom, x to the 4th, x to the 3rd, be x to the 7th. Okay, so when I move this up to the top, right, it's going to turn into a -7. So I end up with x to the -1. When I move this to the top, it's going to turn into a +6, so I end up with y to the 4th. And that is the answer to that one. X to the -1, y to the 4th. You could have also written that as y to the 4th over x, right? That means the same thing. We can move that -1 to the bottom. Or we could put 1 over x, y, -4. Right? All of those answers mean the same thing. Alright, last one. The area of a circle is 49 pi centimeters. So area equals pi r squared. So we got 49 pi equals pi r squared. we're trying to find the circumference. First, we got to divide by pi on both sides. That's going to cancel all those pi's out, and we're going to get 49 equals r squared. Find the square root of that, and find the square root of that. Square root of 49 is 7. So our radius is 7. Now we need to find the circumference. Circumference equals 2 pi r. Our r is 7, so circumference equals 2 times pi times 7. 2 times 7 would be 14. Our circumference is 14 pi, and that's how they left it. If you multiplied that out, we would say 14 times 3.14, and we're going to get 43.96. If you got either one of those answers, then you got it correct. Okay, they mean the same thing. Alright, that is it for this extra long video. Thanks for watching.